I'm incredibly chuffed that I get to be here in this room with all of you, all you smart people. Stijn already said, you, the developers, are the people that can make it happen. You are the ones who can actually do it. So I am honored that I'm here with you. So the title today is You Aren't Going to Need It. Do more with less, or do less, actually. I love the book, The Lazy Programmer. This is also for us. So today, we'll talk about the 7 things every developer, or maybe every person, should know about sustainability, if you ask me. And Stijn said, well, be gentle to the people organizing the conference. Also be gentle to speakers, because maybe you hear that my voice is a little, well, wobbly. That's because I'm incredibly nervous. So be gentle with me too, please. And now this slide is for me. It's also introducing myself a bit, but it also helps me get my nerves under control. So I'm Maryse. You see me on the left-hand side, on the top. I'm also a cyclist. Here I was in Tanzania, cycling for the AMRA Flying Doctors for a good cause. That's why I look so dusty. Maybe I look dusty all the time anyway. I'm a ninja facilitation warrior. That's the second thing you see. This is a drawing made by Thea Schukke, who really saw a ninja in me when it comes about sustainability. Now, the next picture I don't have to tell you anything about. It's just I happen to be in product, and I happen to fall in love with infrastructure. Infrastructure is code and infrastructure teams. So this is why this picture is here. And you'll notice in the talk that there's rather a lot of infrastructure, hardware-related things in the talk. That's just because I love that so much. It's become my passion. I'm also a Stoic practitioner. Today I won't be talking about Stoic philosophy. We don't have time for that. But if you are interested, come over and drink a coffee with me, and we'll chat a bit about Stoic philosophy. One of the things about Stoic philosophy is also make do with less. You aren't going to need it. Do you really need the things that you think you need? No, you don't. So Stoic philosophy fits in the sustainability realm rather neatly, if you ask me. Now, I already mentioned I'm in product. You are the smart people actually doing the work. I'm the one running around in product management. Product owner, product person, product something. I don't care what title you give me, but this is just in to tell you that I can't actually code. Well, I can, but tiny bit. You can. I do the other stuff. So I'm a product person. So bear with me. There is a slide on sustainable coding. Don't ask too many interesting questions because I won't have an answer, because you know the answers on the coding things. All right. And I'm a lover of extreme programming. And of course, those of you really smart people, you've noticed that Yakni, you aren't going to need it, is a extreme programming principle. So it's the do more with less. Now, by now, you've also noticed I've curbed my nerves so we can start with the real bit of the presentation. You aren't going to need it. Well, this is actually only for fun. As you know, my life motto, you aren't going to need it. You can do really more with less. Sustainability is what we talk about today. But what is sustainability, actually? Well, sustainability is about meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Now, this is a definition from 1987, and it still stands. And what it means, well, you can see what it means, but it means that we need to take care of ourselves now and keep future generations in mind. speaking of future generations, this is the reason why, well, in spite of my nerves and, well, being a bit frightened of standing here in front of you, I still take the courage to do this. This is the reason. This is my daughter, my 13-year-old daughter, Iris. She just turned 13. And she is a future generation. And I don't know about you. Maybe you have kids, maybe you don't. Maybe you have nephews, nieces. I don't know, it depends on your situation. Maybe there's someone, or maybe there's animals you care about, or maybe there's other reasons. But for me, my daughter is the reason why I'm so passionate about this sustainability topic. Because I would like to leave the world a bit of a better place, well, for her, for our future generations. And I can't speak for you. I don't know what would motivate you. But for me, this, well, thinking about the better world in the future is the reason why I take up the courage to stand here and talk to you about sustainability. So sustainability, in the definition, is something about, well, leaving the world a better place for the next generations. And often when we talk about sustainability, you talk about the planet. The core part of this presentation will be about, well, carbon coding, carbon reduction, energy efficiency, all things that have to do with the planet. And I will come back to this one. But bear in mind, sustainability is not only about the planet. It's maybe the most urgent thing, the most pressing thing, and also the most tangible thing. Global warming is an effect you undoubtedly heard about. And that's something we work on. That's what we'll be talking about. But there's other things. These are 17 goals that the United Nations came up with. And they're spread over different types of areas. So it's about the planet, but it's also about people. Social sustainability is just as important as taking care of the planet. And by the way, taking care of the planet is also more than only thinking about carbon. Think about water, think about plastic pollution, think about biodiversity. So it's about the planet, it's about people, and it's also about prosperity. It's about how to divide economic wealth throughout the world. And it's about peace and partnerships. Partnerships basically meaning you can't do it on your own. And peace, well, wouldn't we all love peace in our days? If you don't have peace, none of the other things work. So, sustainability is about the planet. Of course, it's about carbon. It's about reducing carbon emissions. It's also about other things. And it's also about people, prosperity, peace, and partnerships. Climate crisis. Stein was already mentioning it. Do we have a climate crisis? Is there a climate emergency? Well, I can't speak for you, but if you look at this graph, I decided to take another graph. If you Google for the hockey stick graph, you'll see the global warming, but undoubtedly you've seen that one, how you can see the Earth warming. This is another slide, another type of graph. What you look at here is what we call overshoot day. As people, we take natural resources from the Earth, from the planet, and it used to be so, as you can see, in the 1970s and the 70s, that we used about what the planet could regenerate. Now we don't. What you see now is what the date is when we've used the natural capacity of the Earth. And that is not the end of the year, it's, well, earlier and earlier. So what you're looking at is Earth Overshoot Day graphs, and you see that it's earlier and earlier in the year when we've used the natural capacity of the world. Just another way of showing you I don't know if you believe in that we have a climate emergency, but these are simple facts. This is, well, scientific truth. And I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to convince you. You make your own choices. You're far too smart not to do so. You will do so. I just want to show you this. I do think we have a climate emergency. This is a country overshoot day. Now, you've got really good eyes in the back, undoubtedly, so I'm assuming you can't read. But just for the fun of it, what it says here is that on March 23, last year, this year already, is when Belgium already used up all the natural resources that they needed, that they would have for the year. So let that sink in for a minute. Already in March, in Belgium, we used what we had for the rest of the year. Of course we don't, because we keep using things, but it will just give you an idea how much resources we use. In the Netherlands, it was April 1st. Anyway, you've got graphs like this. You can see that we're using up more energy than the planet can give us back. Oh, well, at the bottom, there was a website, and I'm quickly clicking on, because at the end, I'll come back to this. And I didn't want you to go and quickly look it up, because otherwise you won't pay attention to the rest of my keynote, because you'll be looking at calculating your own footprint. But at the end, there will be a QR code to this website where you can calculate your own footprint, just for the fun of it, just to give you an idea how your own overshoot day, when that would be. Disaster, right? No, not disaster. Climate risks. I'm not going to take you through this entire slide, but what this shows you is the risks of even more global warming. What happens when we go to 2 Celsius degree global warming? There's numerous problems, numerous challenges that will come up if this keeps going on. So, are we supposed to just sit down and whine and cry in the corner now? It gets even worse. What you're looking at here is energy forecasts for data centers. Well, and networking and production of IT. This is an idea of it will give you an idea of how much energy as an IT sector we're using. And it's funny because undoubtedly, when you're at a party or where you talk to someone, when you talk about sustainability, people very often start about flying, the aviation industry. You shouldn't fly anymore. I see people nodding. Undoubtedly, you've heard that. And that's true. I mean, flying is, carbon-wise, not a good thing to do. But don't underestimate our IT sector. Our own area is, counting for quite a lot of energy consumption and production. Maybe, potentially, our IT industry, our tech industry, is actually worse than aviation. So what you're looking at is that it's growing and growing, and with the AI that Lisa will talk about, it will expand even more. So be aware that you're working in the sector where we can make a difference, because there is a lot of energy rise here. This is Greta Thunberg, who said the famous words, "I want you to panic." I don't want you to panic, don't worry. Before we go on, can we do a quick raise of hands? Not that I can see an awful lot of people, I'll have to look and have to peer in. But can we do a quick show of hands? I'll have wonderful, what a wonderful technician this is. So a quick show of hands. I'll give you a phrase, and if this applies to you, if you think this is true, just raise your hand. So the first one will be climate crisis. What climate crisis? Is there a climate crisis? Of course, now you don't feel free to show your hand because I've just told you that there is a climate crisis. So the second one would be, okay, so we have climate challenges, but tech is going to solve this. Give me a show of hands. Who thinks we can solve the climate challenges with tech? Well, Lisa is definitely thinking so. Oh, come on. I'm glad to see. Yeah, great. Okay, and well, you're looking at Greta Thunberg. Is there also someone who thinks we're doomed anyway, none of it won't matter? Are we doomed? Yeah, there's some people who think we're doomed. I'm with you, by the way. Let's stay positive. I'd like you to, well, after Lisa's keynote, walk out here with a feeling of agency, that you can actually do something. But I'm with you. Yeah, I think we're doomed. And I'm not really sure if that matters, because the planet will take care of itself. We're just trying our best, right? We're trying to do the good thing. Remember, I was also a Stoic practitioner. Just do the right thing. But yeah, let's assume that we're not all doomed altogether. And I definitely don't like the, well, I have no opinion on Greta Thunberg herself, but I don't like this image, because it's definitely not going to help if we're all going to sit in the corner and cry. So, we've had the first bit. Now this is actually going to be your work. Because this was all about the climate, and about the sustainability and things we can do, and that we need to reduce carbon and carbon emissions and energy and what have you. And these are all things, maybe you do them at home. I don't know, maybe you've stopped eating meat, maybe you don't fly anymore, and you travel by train. I'll be traveling to Italy in 2 weeks. I'll go by train. It'll take me a long time. You do things at home, or maybe you don't. It depends on your own situation. I have no judgment. That's up to you. You do things at home, but you spend rather a lot of time at work too, right? Well, this is something that got me thinking. Remember the second slide I showed you? I'm in product management. I work in IT. I spend 40 hours a week at least, usually it's more, at work. I do all these things regarding sustainability for that beautiful daughter of mine and the future generations. But I wasn't actually doing anything at work. Well, I was trying to do something with the paper cups and trying to reuse my coffee mug, but that all felt like tiny things in the big scheme of things. And Stein already mentioned it too. What we need is system change. Well, not climate change, but we need to make a big difference. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use a reusable coffee mug. You should. Every little bit helps. But if you really want to make a big change, and that's where you come in, change the system. And everything is IT. I seem to remember software is eating the world. So if there is a big system change to be made, you are going to do it. This is where we can change. If we change the system, we can turn this climate change or hold the climate change around. And you're the ones to do it. So, don't panic. There is things we can do. This is what got me thinking at work. And hopefully, at the end of this talk, it will get you thinking and get you into gear, saving the planet. And I'm not the only one. Let me be clear on this. I'm not the smart person in the room. Well, you're the smart person in the room. But thankfully, there's a lot of other smart people too. So there is, for example, the Green Software Foundation. Linux has been doing a lot in green software too, by the way. So there's the Green Software Foundation, where they, well, have a mission, and it's formulated, you can read that for yourself. But they want to reduce this impact, the negative impact of the software on our climate. How do we do that? Well, there is a lot of things you can do, but mostly reducing the carbon emissions that software have. All right? So, we're reducing carbon in software. If we reduce carbon in software, we impact the system, we change the system. This is what you do every day, I'm assuming. I have no bonds in this book. It's not on the stock market. I'm not affiliated, but buy this book. Do yourself a favor and buy this book. It's a Bible. Everything you can think of regarding building green software, how to, well, reduce your carbon emissions in your software development is in this book. It's a beautiful book, written by 3 women, by the way. Makes me particularly proud. So do yourself a favor, give yourself a present and buy this book. This is the most important slide of the presentation. If you want to build green or greener software, if you want to start contributing to making the world a bit of a better place in your daily work, where your impact is far bigger than in your personal life, reusing the coffee mug and what have you, these are the things to do. These are the 7 things to remember. Be efficient, be carbon aware. Remember, sustainability is not only about carbon. Measure and monitor. Are there any SREs in the room? Yeah, good. Good work for you. We need to work on observability. So measure and monitor, and of course, the title of this presentation, you aren't going to need it. I'm not going to spill my milk yet, but let me enlighten you. All the other things won't matter if we keep building things we don't need. If we keep producing stuff that isn't going to be used, none of the other things will matter. All right? So let's dive in. Efficiency. What are we looking at? What's this? What are we looking at? Zombies, yes. Start killing your zombies. When we talk about efficiency, the first thing to do, and this is such a, it feels silly to tell you, but really close down applications, services, servers that don't do anything anymore. And I doubted if I had to put this on here, because I thought, well, you're all smart software developers, you don't do this. But somewhere in your organization, there probably is a lot still alive that isn't used anymore. And I put this on here because I'm also telling you my personal story. This is what we did, and it made a huge impact. I think it was a reduction of almost 20%, 18%, when we started, well, basically cleanup. We started cleaning up stuff that wasn't in use anymore. And this is where you as developers also need to work with the product people that are allowed to work with you. Because you need to do that together. You need to talk to the business and say, hey, you're not actually using this. Well, you never know, we might use it in the future. Well, come on, if you're not using it now and you haven't used it for a while, we're never going to use it. Switch it off. If we ever do need it again, we'll build it up again. So switch things off. Stop excessive redundancy. Of course, things need to be redundant sometimes in some situations. But I've been with clients where we had redundant situations. Yeah, because you never knew what might happen. Well, and that costs a lot of energy. And of course, energy emits carbon. Multi-tenancy. I'm pretty sure I'm telling you all these things that you already do. You think are really logic. But if you start really doing this all over, so share machines, find serverless solutions. This is where the big things are going to happen. This is organization-wide where the big difference is going to be made. And what about things that are always on? How many of you have testing solutions that also work in the weekends, over the weekends? Could be useful. Very often, it isn't. They're not used over the weekends or when people don't work. Switch them off. Auto-scaling will, of course, come back at another point, too. So, efficiency is also about, well, using less energy, carbon emission. It's server utilization. In my latest assignment, we figured out that for most of the servers, we had a physical server park, we had the actual physical servers in the basement. They were idle for 80% of the time. Let that sink in for a minute. 80%, not 18, 80. When we started optimizing the server utilization, carbon emissions went down because the energy emission went down. Don't over-provision. Oh, but just to be on the safe side, maybe we should. Just don't. If you don't need it, you don't need it. If you auto-scale, it's going to solve itself anyway. And use auto-scaling. And this is something you can do. If you're in infrastructure as code, or if you're not in infrastructure as code, you talk to the ones who do this. Or you talk to your product person. Bring the discussion up. And there is one thing you can do, and maybe not you personally, but bring up the discussion. Because what will make a huge difference, of course, is also, and that's what it says on the top, lower the bill. If you try and be efficient as you can, the energy bill will go down. Now that's a good thing to sell. I mean, it's a good thing to sell for the climate, but it's a good thing to sell anyway, because the bill will go down. And if you can, it would be interesting to also switch to a renewable energy provider. If there is a quick win, a low-hanging fruit, maybe not entirely in your span of control, but this is one, talk to someone who has the influence to say, hey, maybe we can use a green energy provider. That will cut your carbon emissions. All right, now this is a slide I promised you at the start I really quickly want to go through because you are going to ask me all kinds of intelligent questions that I then cannot answer because I can't code. But what they also say in the book, and what smart software engineers have been telling me, is that, well, actually the best thing to do is not build anything at all. Yeah, but that's, of course, a bit of a silly advice. But do you always need to build something yourself? Maybe you can use something that's already in use by someone else, a managed service, for example. But if you have to build it yourself, if you really have to develop your own software, use a lightweight platform, use a lightweight framework, a language. And now here I'm going to really be in your area because I was playing around with this beautiful graphs of what programming language to use. Maybe you, well, as it says, you could move from Python to Rust. Well, you know far better than I if that's actually a good idea. And probably it isn't. Because you might win on the efficiency side, but you'll lose on the productivity side. Some things can be done, move to Rust, but it'll take you a very long time. It's very complex. It'll, well, take a lot of effort. And that, of course, also takes energy. I mean, emotionally, but I meant more practically as well. So in the end, it's not really about programming languages. And that's why I didn't stick the graph in with, oh, you should use this and you shouldn't use that. Because in the end, maybe that doesn't matter all that much. It's about how you use it and where you think you should cut and where you can be more efficient and where maybe you can't. And you choose to do it differently. I don't know Cyton or Mojo. Are there any smart people here who've already played around with either of these options? Ah, cool. Oh, I'm going to run up to you in the break and ask you how it was. Excellent. So, efficiency in your code. Well, don't build it. Use it lightweight. Consider a new language, maybe. But redoing everything just in a new language is maybe not always the best idea. Replace inefficient custom code. Obviously, these are all things you do, I hope. Replace inefficient services, libraries. And the last thing, of course, faster isn't always most energy efficient. It doesn't always mean that if it goes faster, if you take longer, I mean, if it's faster in running, but if you take longer because it's more complex, you still end up, bottom line, with a lot of carbon emission. Phew, I've had that slide. The coding stuff. So efficiency, this is of course right up my alley, is also about hardware. We already spoke about well, let's say the server side or the serverless side. But this is also hardware. It's reduction of embedded carbon. Embedded carbon sounds like a really complicated term, but it means as much as the carbon that is in your hardware, that is there when it was made. For example, your mobile phone has a carbon embedded rate, and that is how much carbon was used to produce your phone, the physical thing. And this is actually a big impact. So if we help people to keep their devices in use for longer, a real simple example, of course, is an Apple phone. Very often Apple phones can't be used at a certain point because the software simply doesn't run anymore. If you as developers help people to keep their devices in use for longer, we reduce this embedded carbon because it's only, this embedded carbon is only used once or produced once when the thing is made. If they can hold on to it for longer, extend the lifespan, that will make a huge difference. Make backward compatible software. And if we extend life cycles of end-user devices, but what I did, at a former client, we had servers that had to be replaced because they were 3 years old. And that was just how we did things. That was the economic value was, that was paid for, and we had to, sort of start buying new servers and redoing all that. And we said, well, they're all still doing pretty neatly. They're doing well. Let's not replace them. Let's extend the lifespan for another year. Let's delay the life cycle with a year. So we kept it in use for longer. And that made a huge difference in the energy emission, in the carbon emission. So extend the life cycle. This was about efficiency. Remember, the hardware, the coding. And this is about carbon awareness. Be carbon aware. Do more when the electricity is cleaner. Simply means when the sun's shining. You can move loads around. You know how this works. You can follow the sun strategy. I see people nodding. So be carbon aware. Be mindful of when you do things. Do things need to run synchronously, or can you do them asynchronously at a moment that somewhere in time, somewhere, there is renewable energy available? Do not run jobs when they're not needed at a time that there is no renewable energy available. And of course, you as smart people are already thinking, that means I might shift things around. And if I know that this can be done at some point somewhere where the sun's on, maybe some other time zone, maybe another place in the world, so that is the spatial shifting, I can shift things around. This is being carbon aware. What you see in the graph, it's the graph from the Green Software Foundation. I've stolen it since they're far smarter than I am. So this is the carbon intensity, that's high, and you can play around with when you do what, over time and over spaces in the world. Follow the sun. So be efficient and be carbon aware. This is a bonus. This wasn't supposed to be in here, but I was reading about Lisa's talk, and then I thought I'll quickly stick this in, because AI is going to make a huge impact on, sustainability. Because it takes up a lot of energy. There's a lot of energy consumption involved in AI and machine learning. And I don't know enough about this. And it's still a very new area altogether anyway. That's why it's so cool that Lisa's coming to talk to us. And we need to start thinking about the sustainability of AI. And maybe you're the one who can ask the nasty questions in your organization. If AI is helping, is saving, it can help save the climate, I think, then it's wonderful. But also be the one who's asking the questions. What will the impact be? How ethical is the data that we're using to train the models? How ethical was that gathered? Also here, shrink things. Do we really need all this data for the model? I don't have answers for you, but I would like to invite you to ask these critical questions. AI, yes, absolutely. And how can we do this as sustainable as possible in a way that we're not adding to the carbon intensity? Sustainability is not only about carbon. It's not only about the planet. It's also about social sustainability. It's also about, gender equality, about taking care of, maybe people with special needs. And these are things you can do in your coding as well. This is also sustainability. This is I'm certainly don't know what the word is in English, braille. Well, you know what, I see people nodding. It's when you're blind, you need the tactical information for reading. So these are things you also can include in your software. And this is an example I've been using over and over again. This is simple software work. You understand what's happening here. This is also social sustainability. Be careful of diversity and inclusion. Mind that gap, please. And then we haven't even spoken about water. We haven't spoken about other things. We mentioned biodiversity. But I'm sure you've all heard about all the water that's needed to cool those data centers. Water shortage is going to be a huge problem. Hey, but we can't talk about everything today. What you should do, however, while we're slowly nearing the end of this presentation, is measure. And I already said, measure and monitor. There's no way it's already observable because we're still struggling to find all the data we need, and we're trying to monitor. And then the next step will be observability, of course. And then I keep saying I don't know anything of coding, but I do know the smart people who do. So go find out this Green Software Impact Framework. It's from the Green Software Foundation. It's an open source project. It's an incubation project. They're still trying to figure out how to measure the carbon intensity of your software. So don't trust me on it. Go and find them. There will be a link in the next slide. And find out how you can measure the carbon your software is emitting. Start somewhere. Start measuring. They always say if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. I'm not quite sure if that actually goes for sustainability too, because there's a lot of things like moving to a renewable energy provider is something without measuring you can still improve it. But still, roughly speaking, of course, that still goes. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So start measuring, and it won't be perfect. You know, you can't fix everything all at once, but start somewhere. At least where we first started at my latest assignment is just pick up the energy bills. Start with the energy bill. At least then you know how much, what you paid for. That's a way to start. But go and check out the Green Software Impact Framework for measuring the impact your software has, your carbon emissions. Here it is. I was so proud that I got the QR code in. I'd actually be curious to see if it works. And now I quickly clicked on. No, this is the formula that's behind how to measure this carbon intensity. And it's actually really simple. It's energy consumed, carbon emitted, and you add, well, the hardware emissions that the software is running on the hardware. So this is something you can do for yourself. You'll have to find ways to start measuring. And as I said, start small and evolve from there. But you can take this formula. If you look for SCI, you'll find it everywhere, the software carbon intensity. It's a simple formula. What won't be simple is finding the data to work with. Let's start somewhere. And then I promised you I'd come back to this. It's a simple slide. And it's, well, for me, it's the essential one of all of this presentation, because you ain't gonna need it. If we optimize everything and we keep building things that we don't need, that end up on a, well, let's say, virtual shelf, then what's the use of all of this? You can do it really carbon aware, and you can code really efficiently, and you can do all these things, but if you're not actually using it, what's the use of it? So keep it simple. Find a lazy product person. Someone like me, for example, who keeps saying, no, we don't need this. We're not going to develop that. So degrow your software. Do less. Now, I'm also a politically engaged person. I would love to talk to you about degrowth today. It's a different post-capitalist model for the world. It's another passion of mine, but that's not what I'm here for. That's not what I was, well, supposed to be delivering. However, I'm showing you this because this is the basis of this Yagni principle. You ain't gonna need it principle. So tomorrow, when you're back at work, before you start coding, before you start doing things, consider, do we really need this? And if you do that every so now and then, every so often, it'll make a difference. So, degrow your software. Try and do a little less. That's why I have the blank slide here. Do a little less. No coding. At the start, I promised you there was a nice, well, it's a sort of survey. You can calculate your own, well, your personal carbon footprint. If you go to Footprint Network and the QR code, it's a sort of survey that will give you your own personal overshoot day. So if everybody in the world lived like you, when would our overshoot day be? It's rather a long survey, but it's fun because it gives you some insight in the things you can consider when in your personal life you want to live a little more sustainable. You don't have to, of course, but you can. And it's rather fun and insightful. If you have any questions, well, there is no time for it now. That was calculated. But I'll be around all day. Come up and chat to me. I was going to chat to the observability, and there was someone who played around with the new sustainable programming languages, so I might come up to you too. But find me later on if you have questions. By all means, feel free. Well, it's not going to be easy. Nobody said it was going to be easy. And I still think, remember how we started, I still think we need to do the right thing. You know, we need to try. And we can. Because remember, you can change the system. You are the smart people who can make a difference here. So it's not easy, but let's do it. Together we can. Let's go forth and make this world a bit of a better place for our next generations, whatever that may mean for you personally. Together we can. And as techies for the planet, we make a big difference. We really can. And I'd like to finish with a quote of Rabbi Hillel, who's the person you see in the stone, marked in the stone. And it comes from the Talmud. It's actually about doing the right thing for the future generations. And it means as much as, it says as much as, if I am for myself alone, then who am I? And if not me, then who? And if not now, then when?